we'll try to not keep you very long.
Okay.
All right. Hey everyone, welcome to another Tower Babble podcast. As always, I'm Julian Mush. I'm joined by Daniel D'Souza.
Yo.
And we are honored to have with us Pablo Hidalgo, executive on the LucasFIlm Story Group. That's right?
That's right. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. It's an honor to have you. Became a huge fan of you watching Rebels Recon.
Oh, yeah,
Which is
thanks.
why I ended up giving you that cup, and I feel a little silly.
No. It's all good. I appreciate it. Yeah,
Okay.
I know what you're going to say because I revealed.
Yeah.
I revealed in an exclusive panel
That's right.
here at FanQuest that the coffee drinking is really just a bit that we did for Rebels Recon. But that doesn't mean I don't drink coffee.
That's
So-
fair. And also other things can go in there other than coffee.
Absolutely.
Right.
Pencils, liquor, you name it.
Yeah, I was thinking the second one mostly. So I know you've been talking Star Wars this whole weekend, but we're going to keep talking Star Wars
No,
for a
that's
bit more.
fine. That's what I'm here for.
So, Dan, why don't you start off? You had a question about the Old Republic, I think.
Yeah, it's basically a follow-up to one of the questions that happened in the room there. I find that I tend to be more interested in sort of the more fantasy, like mythological aspects of the lore. So the Old Republic comes to mind. So my question is basically, is there any particular storyline, I'm thinking like Exar Kun, Naga Sadow, that kind of stuff, that you think would translate well, obviously without revealing anything about potential projects, that you think would translate well to either a show or a movie?
Personally, I think any of those are potentials because I really enjoy that era as well. I love the old Tales of the Jedi comics and the Knights of the Old Republic game that came afterwards. So do I think there's a rich realm of exploration? Absolutely. I think part of the challenge is finding a filmmaker or a storyteller that also embodies that passion. And also, I think there's an opportunity to explore visually what those look like in a way that I don't think the comics necessarily delivered or the video games necessarily delivered. I think the folks who are making the Old Republic games have to meet a certain Star Wars criteria in order to meet people's expectations of what Star Wars looks like. I think the film, if say a film execution of this is done, or a television, or another version of this is done, I think there's an opportunity to be more aggressive with the design and come up with something that, on first glance, looks like medieval Star Wars.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Because that was kind of my follow-up to that question was going to be, because, according to the Old Republic stuff, which is not necessarily canon anymore,
Sure.
some of it is.
Yeah.
But that's like how many years in the past of what we know now?
It's upwards of 5,000 years, maybe more. I mean, we know that when Obi-Wan says 1,000 generations, he means a long, long time. The thing is, we have not seen that visually expressed by the Lucasfilm art department.
Right, because it looks the same.
Yeah, we've seen it expressed by amazing artists at video game companies and comic books, but I'd love to see the Lucasfilm art department take a stab at something like that, should it ever come to pass.
Because what we have now with that old stuff is basically everything's more square, and that's that's the difference. There's still droids, there's still spaceships, and those things need to exist. But apparently the trajectory is everything stays the same, it just gets rounder over time.
Right, and a lot of that it has to fit within the framework of whatever game engine is driving it, and it also has to fit in the framework of being a merchandisable Star Wars product.
That's true.
But I think, if you holistically build or holistically commit to a decision to tell a Star Wars story set in a different era, I think you start from square one and have an art department define what that is.
Does that make it harder to sell? That it would be that much drastically different than what everyone already thinks when they think Star Wars, right? They have a certain, like you said, they have a certain thought in their mind. Does doing that, starting almost a blank slate, so far disconnected from everything else, does that make it harder to sell to fans?
In my mind, I hope not, because I hope that everything else that's in that story is delivering on the promise of Star Wars, and you can accept that maybe things look a bit different. One of the things I always admired George Lucas for is that he was never enamored with anything that he did. He was willing to redefine things. So, there was a lot of, I don't want to say criticism, but reaction to the prequels looking so different from the classics. But that's because he wasn't in love with the classics the same way we were. And so I think there's still room to push the design.
Yeah, cool. Dan, do you have another follow-up there?
Well, I had a completely separate, different question, actually,
Yeah, go ahead.
which isn't even technically just a Star Wars question. It's more like fantasy and sci-fi in general tend to act as an analog to a lot of real-world issues.
Yes, absolutely.
So my question is, the obvious comparison is, the Empire and fascism, that kind of stuff. Why do you think sci-fi and fantasy in particular are so effective at these analogous stories?
I think as you're able to get to the core of certain things, you're able to describe things in a shorthand without bringing any real world baggage to it.
You can cut through the red tape.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people. If you import a real world element, you bring a lot of baggage and point of view. And if you're able to say, instead, this is representative of that thing,
Right.
without having to be that thing, that lesson might land stronger because a person who is visually cued to get defensive about something might drop those defenses, and all of a sudden the message gets through because you didn't wrap it in a contemporary package.
That's smart.
So.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is you brought up Lucas, and you've always had a chance to work with him a little bit.
Especially on episode 3, I'd say
right.
that's the one where I worked. Well, I don't want to say, I mean, I obviously worked for him.
Yeah.
I was more watching him.
Yeah,
you know.
right. But it seems like there's a commitment to honoring his vision to some degree, I think, at
Absolutely.
Lucasfilm still.
Yeah.
It seems like even like Dave Filoni seems like he's kind of carrying the torch for that in a lot of ways. How do you go about maintaining that balance between staying true to what George wanted to do and what, moving forward at the same time?
Sure. I mean, a lot of it is we look at the stuff that inspired him, and we ask why is that inspiring to him, and we look at the central message and what he had intended to do, and we never forget that notion that he was looking to give a series of life lessons to people of a young age, but not in a sense that they were being lectured. If you wrap that up in an adventure, perhaps they will absorb these messages while they're also having fun. And I think those are some of the markers that like we try to live true to the sort of goalposts that we keep in mind. Is like, is this Star Wars? Is this something that that embodies its values? The other thing too is beyond like the sort of mythic and thematic storytelling is that idea of the things that pushing technology forward and trying things that have never been done before in the film space. And it's not that every movie has the opportunity to do that, but when the opportunity comes up, don't shy away from it.
Or even in animation.
Exactly.
In Rebels, you guys did that combination of the 2D animation and 3D animation.
That was a lot of fun.
That was really, really cool. And speaking of animation, you said, speaking to younger generations, right? And it seems like those animated series are aimed at a younger generation.
Yeah.
How do you strike a balance between maintaining the interest of obviously an older fan base, because Star Wars spans generations now, right?
Yeah.
While also, not going too dark, as it were. you know?
Yeah, I think there were lessons that were learned in Clone Wars because Clone Wars certainly went too dark and ended up scaring away a lot of the kids that were supposed to come see it. Yeah, so it's sort of like asking ourselves, is this still something that a kid would enjoy, and then a parent would feel like they could trust their kid to enjoy? Obviously, the best situation is where kids are watching with their parents. That's what we'd like because they're able to have that conversation and that dialogue, which is a very powerful thing with Star Wars. We meet a lot of kids that are able to actually enjoy something with their parents in a way that they don't otherwise, So we could push certain things in terms of its drama and intensity, but not so much that we think a parent would feel it wasn't appropriate.
Right. So is that kind of, this kind of relates to another question I was going to ask about the short form versus long form storytelling. At the end of Clone Wars, there was arcs that were 3, 4, 5 episodes long, right? And Rebels started, I don't think there was a single 2-episode arc until the second season. Was that a conscious decision to try to make it more accessible?
It was, yeah. We realized we were doing so much that was new. It was easier to present that new stuff in a more digestible format. It wasn't until you got to know these characters that we were able to bring in longer storylines. And season 4, the second half of season 4, is really much all one long storyline. We wouldn't feel the confidence, honestly, to do that because we ourselves didn't really know the characters until we started telling more and more stories with them, and the actors themselves embodied them. So that only comes out of doing multiple seasons and feeling comfortable with them. Clone Wars had the advantage of having established characters, and a lot of those established characters carried the arcs to begin with because you knew who Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme were. And it wasn't until later that Rex could carry an arc, or then Ahsoka herself could.
The Rex, my favorite arcs are usually the Rex-led ones.
The clone ones, yeah.
The clones are just so fun for me.
They're pretty amazing.
When Battlefront 2, I don't know if you were involved in doing any work with consulting on that or anything?
A little bit. There are some folks in the story group who are much more focused on the game development. So I kind of come on really, really early, but in terms of the day-to-day management of it, there's some other folks who do it.
I just thought it was fun to be able to get the clones back in there.
Yeah,
That's really where I was going with that.
No, I love it because there was a whole generation that grew up with the prequels and Clone Wars, and I'm glad that they're able to still engage with it in whatever way they can, particularly through Battlefront.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much ready to wrap it up.
Yep.
I had one final question.
Sure.
Again, a bit more abstract. I have this sort of memory when I was younger of visiting family in Alberta. Basically, we had all the cousins together having a camp out on a trampoline. My uncle bought a projector, and we watched New Hope under the stars sort of thing. Like, just like a fun memory. So
Sure.
I wanted to see if you had any sort of fond childhood memories with Star Wars.
Oh, absolutely. Here in Winnipeg, we got pay TV, cable television early on, probably in the early 80s, 82 or 83. And I remember this was back in the day where cable television, it was really easy to get for free. Like, even if you weren't trying to steal it, if you had a certain type of TV and you put it in between two channels, you would get it. And the very first thing that was shown on, I think it was called First Choice. That was the very first. It was Star Wars. And I didn't even know this thing existed. I was just flipping channels, and I put it in between channels like 2 or 3 or 6 and 7. And all of a sudden, I found Star Wars on my TV. I'm like, what is Star Wars doing on my TV? And it was pay TV back in the day before they figured out how to get into your house reliably and encrypted. And I would watch Star Wars on this it was this portable TV that you would take to the beach. For whatever reason, that one TV got pay TV for free, and I was watching Star Wars on a 3.5 black and white screen.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That's serendipity,
Well, it was an honor having you.
Thanks
it's
for
really
having
cool
me.
having someone who's from Winnipeg be so involved in Star Wars. It feels detached almost, the whole process of it, when you're in the prairies in the middle of Canada. But when you can kind of tie it back to someone from home, it adds an extra little aspect of it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, I make it no secret that growing up in Winnipeg no doubt made me who I am and definitely helped get me where I am right now. So
awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Cool. Thanks,
honestly.
guys. Take care.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview. It was an absolute honor having Pablo join us at FanQuest. Now, we're normally an audio podcast, and you can subscribe to everything we do by heading over to towerbabble.ca/subscribe, okay? But we're obviously also doing video now, but we're only getting in at the ground floor of that, and you can join us and follow along that entire process as we post new stuff, new awesome stuff, hopefully like that Pablo interview, by subscribing to our channel right now, and I hope you do that. And we'll be back soon with more content for you.